Regulation and determinants of GFR in renal blood flow. We will be discussing the determinants of both of these GFR and renal blood flow, along with certain variations in the determinant factors and how does the body regulate these two in normal range. So starting from the determinants of GFR, as this is the filtration across the capillaries, and we have discussed in our first session that filtration across the capillaries is governed by two factors, the permeability of the capillary as well as the net filtration pressure. So same is what applies to the glomerular capillaries as well. The net filtration pressure and filtration coefficient is going to decide the filtration across the glomerular capillaries. Net filtration pressure is further dependent upon the four Starling forces, two hydrostatic pressures and two collidosmotic pressure. In case of Bowman's capsule, we can label it as hydrostatic pressure and collidosmotic pressure of Bowman's capsule rather than of the interstitium. Whereas the filtration coefficient is pertinent to the characteristics of glomerular capillary, which respond to the surface area and the hydraulic conductivity. Now, in case of net filtration pressure, the GFR or the filtration is going to be directly proportional to the hydrostatic pressure in the glomerular capillaries. More the glomerular hydrostatic pressure, more it will favor the filtration. Whereas more the glomerular collidosmotic pressure, it is going to favor reabsorption, or you can say this is going to inhibit the filtration. In case of Bowman's capsule, normally the collidosmotic pressure in the Bowman's capsule should be equal to 0. But if there is going to be proteins filtered into the Bowman's capsule, this is going to pull the fluid out of the capillary and increase the filtration. Hydrostatic pressure in the Bowman's capsule should also be less, and if this is increased for some reason, maybe because of certain blockade, if it increases, this is going to push the fluid away from it into the capillaries and thus hamper the filtration. So there are two forces which are promoting the filtration and two forces which are decreasing the filtration across the glomerular capillaries. If you understand the basic logic, you can predict by looking into variable factors which Starling force they are acting at and what is going to be the possible role, increase the filtration or decrease the filtration, and thus the GFR as well. So starting from the normal physiology, you have the normal values of these Starling forces. Let's see if we can calculate the GFR. To calculate the filtration, first we have to calculate the net filtration pressure. As you can see, this force is favoring filtration, plus these two are hampering filtration, 18 plus 32, and we get the net filtration pressure, which comes out to be 10 millimeters of mercury. Now we have to multiply this net filtration pressure with the filtration coefficient, which for the glomerular capillaries is 12.5 milliliters per minute per millimeters of mercury. And if we convert it to the 100 gram of the renal tissue, this becomes 4.2 milliliters per minute per millimeters of mercury, which is much more as compared to the capillaries in other parts of the body. For example, skeletal muscles, heart and brain have much lower filtration coefficient values. So average of other body tissues is 0.01 only, whereas in kidneys this is much more. So net filtration pressure and filtration coefficient both are the determinants of the GFR. In any case in which net filtration pressure is increased, GFR will be increased, and same as that for the filtration coefficient, if it increases, GFR is going to increase. Now let's have a look which of these Starling forces can increase the net filtration pressure. If glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure increases, of course it will favor filtration and increase the GFR. But if the glomerular capillary collidosmotic pressure increases, it will favor reabsorption and reduce the GFR. Bowman's capsule hydrostatic pressure will also push the fluid into the capillaries and will reduce the GFR. So by increasing this, net filtration pressure and GFR will increase, but because of these two Starling forces, GFR can decrease. Then comes the filtration coefficient. If there is increased surface area, filtration coefficient will increase and the GFR will increase. For example, surface area of the glomerular capillaries can be increased or decreased by the mesangial cell contraction or relaxation, which is under the response to not only sympathetic innervation but also certain impact of autocoids. And then comes the hydraulic conductivity. More it is, the more will be the GFR. For example, in case of certain toxins, ischemia, infections, the hydraulic conductivity and endothelial cell integrity of glomerular capillaries may be damaged, leading to increased filtration coefficient and thus increased GFR. Also, by simply vasoconstriction and vasodilation, the surface area availability and permeability across the capillaries can be modified. We will look into the variable physiological and pathological states which can impact these 5 things, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and see how they can increase or decrease GFR. So starting from the net filtration pressure is directly proportional to the GFR. Glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure directly proportional to the GFR. For example, mean arterial blood pressure, afferent and efferent arteriolar resistance can alter the glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure. Now, how will they alter? As we know, the capillary hydrostatic pressure is exerted because of the blood volume and pressure. So, in all these conditions in which the mean arterial blood pressure increases, for example, hypertension, GFR will increase because of increased glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure. How does the efferent and efferent arteriolar resistance impact the glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure? That is quite tricky. If there is afferent arteriolar dilatation, more blood will flow into the glomerular capillaries and this will also increase the glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure. But if we constrict the efferent arteriole, this will occlude the passage of fluid out of it, rather lead to accumulation inside the glomerular capillaries, thus increasing the glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure. So, efferent arteriolar dilatation and efferent arteriolar constriction are going to increase the glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure. If we translate it into these terms, increased mean arterial pressure is proportional to the GFR, directly proportional. Afferent arteriolar resistance is inversely proportional. If we increase the resistance or we constrict, resistance increase is synonymous to constriction of afferent arteriole, the GFR will rather decrease because you are not letting the blood flow into the glomerular capillary. Whereas efferent arteriolar resistance, if increased up to a limit, it will directly increase the value of the GFR. So we began with GFR. It is dependent upon net filtration pressure and filtration coefficient. Net filtration pressure, 3 forces starting from the glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure, which is going to increase if there is a high arterial blood pressure, increase if there is afferent arteriolar dilation, and increase if there is efferent arteriolar constriction. For example, angiotensin 2. It has a preferential vasoconstriction at the efferent arteriolar level. So, whenever there is a high level of angiotensin 2, it has more receptor at efferent arteriole. It will cause constriction over here and increase the glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure and increase the GFR. Whereas those factors, for example, sympathetic discharge is going to constrict the afferent arterioles, decrease the blood flow and GFR. Then comes the different examples. Mean arterial blood pressure, for example, increases in hypertension, GFR increases. Decreases in hypotensive shock, GFR decreases. Afferent arteriolar resistance, increases by constriction, for example, sympathetic discharge, GFR will decrease. If it is relaxed by nitric oxide, GFR will increase because of more blood flowing into the glomerular capillaries. Efferent arteriolar resistance, if increased, for example, by angiotensin 2, GFR will increase. Efferent arteriolar constrictive effect will increase the GFR only up to a limit. If the constriction is severe, this will hamper the blood flow and decrease the GFR. So we call it a biphasic effect. Then comes the effect of filtration fraction and plasma colloid osmotic pressure on the second Starling force of importance, capillary colloid osmotic pressure. First, we have seen capillary hydrostatic pressure, now capillary colloid osmotic pressure. The capillary colloid osmotic pressure will of course increase when the plasma colloid osmotic pressure increase and decrease when it decreases. So these are directly proportional to each other. Let's take the example of a clinical variation, reduced plasma colloid osmotic pressure. For example, in malnutrition, in proteinuria, liver failure, whenever there is decreased plasma colloid osmotic pressure, it is going to increase the filtration across the capillaries, thus increase the GFR. This is simple. Second one is the impact on the filtration fraction. This is quite tricky and conceptual. Now, what is filtration fraction? Filtration fraction is the fraction of renal plasma flow which is filtered at the level of glomerular capillaries. More the filtration fraction, more blood is being filtered at the level of Bowman's capillary. When more plasma is going to be filtered, what would be left in the capillaries will be plasma proteins. So we have afferent end of glomerular capillaries and other is efferent end. If the filtration fraction is more in this area, more fluid is being filtered, and in this area we will have more proteins left. When more proteins will be left because of increased filtration fraction, these will retard further filtration. And ultimately, this will retard the GFR. So let me clean it all up and quickly review. Filtration fraction, if more, GFR will be less because of presence of more plasma proteins left in the glomerular capillaries. Plasma colloid osmotic pressure, again inversely proportional to GFR. If plasma proteins are less, filtration is going to be more. Then comes the impact on Bowman's capsule hydrostatic pressure, the third Starling force. If this increases in the Bowman's capsule, this is going to push the fluid into the capillaries, thus reduce the GFR. For example, in case of ureteric obstruction, urine will accumulate, it will exert back pressure, reduce the filtration, and GFR will ultimately be reduced. So we have seen the impact of different variants which can alter the net filtration pressure by changing either the capillary hydrostatic pressure, Bowman's capsule hydrostatic pressure, or plasma colloid osmotic pressure. Now let's have a look at filtration coefficient, which is dependent upon surface area and the hydraulic conductivity. These both are directly proportional to the GFR. More the surface area, more is going to be filtration. If there is a renal disease which is leading to decreased number of capillaries, for example, diabetic nephropathy, this is going to decrease the GFR. Similarly, by mesangial cell contraction, available surface area decreases and GFR decreases. Hydraulic conductivity is again directly proportional to the GFR. If the hydraulic conductivity decreases, for example, by sclerosis of the glomerular capillaries in the hypertension, the filtration will decrease. These are the agents which can either contract or relax the mesangial cells. If there is contraction of the mesangial cell, available surface area decreases, so as the GFR, it also decreases. This is the summary of all those factors what we have just discussed. The net filtration pressure and filtration coefficient. Inside the net filtration pressure, we saw glomerular capillary pressure, osmotic pressure, Bowman's capsule pressure, and variable reasons of their variation along with clinical examples and their impact on the GFR. This is the summary from the guidance. The impact of filtration fraction, Bowman's capsule hydrostatic pressure, capillary kaleidosmotic and capillary hydrostatic pressure in relation to arterial pressure, efferent and afferent arteriolar resistance. We have discussed all these points one by one previously. So I hope now you can go through this exercise and predict the impact of the given case scenarios on the GFR. So starting from the thickening of the glomerular basement membrane, you have to tell which determinant is being affected and what is the impact on GFR. Now, if there is thickening, the hydraulic conductivity will decrease, the filtration coefficient will decrease, so as the GFR. Urethral obstruction by stone, it will increase the Bowman's capsule hydrostatic pressure and decrease GFR. Hypoproteinemia will decrease the kaleidosmotic pressure and increase the filtration. Decreased renal blood flow will decrease the glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure and the GFR. Mildly decreased renal blood flow, where the capillary hydrostatic pressure stays normal, has a biphasic effect. It will increase the filtration fraction. Now, filtration fraction is equal to GFR divided by renal plasma flow. The renal plasma flow was decreased, but GFR was constant, so filtration fraction was increased. Now, as the filtration fraction increases, this will raise the plasma kaleidosmotic pressure and thus reduce the GFR ultimately. Mild efferent arteriolar constriction, for example, by release of angiotensin 2, will increase the capillary hydrostatic pressure, but severe efferent arteriolar constriction, maybe 2 to more than 3 times, will reduce the renal plasma flow and decrease the GFR. Increased blood pressure will increase GFR by increasing glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure. Constriction of afferent arteriole will reduce this hydrostatic pressure. Angiotensin 2 was supposed to bring about efferent arteriolar constriction. If we block this angiotensin 2, efferent arteriolar resistance will decrease, so as the glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure and GFR. Increased sympathetic activity will increase the afferent arteriolar resistance, that decrease the glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure and the GFR. This is a list of factors that can influence GFR by bringing about vasoconstriction or vasodilation. All those leading to constriction of the afferent arterioles are reducing the GFR. For example, norepinephrine, epinephrine, endothelin, angiotensin 2, because of its differential effect on the efferent arteriole, prevents the decrease in the GFR. Nitric oxide and prostaglandins, because of their vasodilatory effect, can increase the GFR. Okay, I hope now you can guess all these. Renal sympathetic stimulation is causing vasoconstriction, so decrease the GFR and renal blood flow. Norepinephrine, again vasoconstriction. Endothelin, vasoconstriction, reduce GFR. Angiotensin 2, efferent arteriolar constriction, and it is going to temporarily increase or prevent decrease in the GFR. Impaired nitric oxide production, there will be no vasodilation, so decreased blood flow. This impaired nitric oxide production is related to hypertension. When there is increased blood pressure, this increases the glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure and somewhat can increase the GFR. NSAIDs are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs which inhibit the production of prostaglandins. As prostaglandins were there for vasodilation, when there was no vasodilation, so this is going to decrease the blood flow as well as the GFR. any potential autocoids that combat the angiotensin 2 mediated constriction in afferent arterioles. And now we know that angiotensin 2 has a preferential impact on the efferent arterioles, not on the afferent arterioles. So what is preventing this? One, there are more receptors on the efferent arteriole. Number two, there are certain autocoids which are inhibiting the action of angiotensin 2 on the afferent arterioles, and they are vasodilatory in nature, including nitric oxide and the prostaglandins. Now that we have discussed the determinants of the GFR, I hope now you can choose which of these are the most important in determining the filtration across the glomerular capillaries. Yes, right. The hydrostatic pressure and the kaleidosmotic pressure are most involved in the day-to-day variation, whereas the woman's capsule hydrostatic and kaleidosmotic pressure are involved in certain anomalies only. Now that we have seen the determinants of the GFR and renal blood flow, we will look into the details of how the daily regulation of GFR and renal blood flow is brought about to avoid larger changes in the urine output. This can be broadly divided into three categories: the impact of autonomic nervous system, role of autocoids or hormones, and the intrinsic feedback control inside the kidneys. Autonomic nervous system has majorly the role of sympathetic nervous system, hormones and autocoids that are either vasoconstrictors or dilators, and intrinsic feedback involves two mechanisms, tubuloglomerular feedback and the myogenic mechanism. We will look into the details of all these one by one, starting from the sympathetic discharge in the heading of the autonomic nervous system, which has a major role to play in regulating GFR and renal blood flow. In case of mild sympathetic discharge, what happens? It increases the release of renin from the juxtaglomerular cells. Also, the sympathetic discharge causes increased tubular reabsorption of the fluid, leading to decreased urine output, but it did not impact the renal blood flow or GFR. It exerted its action by enhancing the renal tubular reabsorption. For the GFR or renal blood flow to change, a severe sympathetic discharge is required, which will cause renal vasoconstriction of afferent and efferent arterioles. This is going to reduce GFR and renal blood flow, and rather the blood flow will be diverted to the vital organs. As in case of hypovolemic shock, the body will not be trying to make the urine or get rid of the excretory waste products, rather save the vital organs like heart or brain. So the purpose over here is to decrease the GFR in renal blood flow and divert the blood to the vital organs where it is essentially required right now. Renal responses to graded renal stimulation, you can see in case of successive increase in renal sympathetic nerve stimulation. At this frequency, there was no impact on reabsorption, GFR, renal blood flow. Later on, the renin secretion rate was increased. RAAS stands for renin secretion, but still there was no impact on urinary excretion rate, GFR, renal blood flow. Even if it is further increased, this will decrease the urinary excretion of sodium, but still GFR and renal blood flow are not impacted. You can see at a much higher frequency of renal nerve stimulation, now there is going to be decreased urinary loss of sodium, decreased GFR, as well as decreased renal blood flow. So we have seen the role of sympathetic nervous system. Now let's have a look at the role of autocoids in the regulation of GFR and renal blood flow. All those autocoids which are going to dilate the afferent arterioles will increase the GFR and renal blood flow by increasing the glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure and vice versa. Whereas at the level of efferent arterioles, mild resistance is going to increase the glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure and GFR, and severe constriction will decrease the renal blood flow and the GFR. this is the summary of the factors that we have seen already under the heading of determinants of the GFR in renal blood flow, and they are also going to regulate the GFR in renal blood flow. For example, renal sympathetic discharge, norepinephrine and endothelin in the first three conditions are going to cause afferent arteriolar constriction and reduce GFR. Angiotensin 2 will, however, constrict the efferent arteriole and increase GFR. Nitric oxide, if not produced in case of hypertension, will be related with the increased glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure, whereas stopping the production of prostaglandins by NSAIDs will lead to vasoconstriction and decreased GFR. Potential autocoids that inhibit angiotensin 2 mediated vasoconstriction in afferent arterioles, of course, are those which cause vasodilation, for example, nitric oxide and the prostaglandins. Now, the third point, intrinsic feedback control in regulation of GFR and the renal blood flow, is the third limb of how the body regulate GFR in renal blood flow, and it includes two mechanisms, including the tubuloglomerular feedback and the myogenic mechanism. So how do you define it? On the first hand, this autoregulation, if you look at this image, two graphs, on the bottom one, you can see on x-axis there is increase in the mean arterial pressure from 50 to 200 millimeters of mercury. But despite this huge variation in the mean arterial pressure, you can see the renal blood flow and the glomerular filtration rate was kept constant at a plateau for quite a large range. So this is what we call autoregulation. This is because of intrinsic renal mechanisms to maintain a constant GFR and renal blood flow despite variations in the mean arterial pressure from the range of 70 to 180 millimeters of mercury. Before and after that GFR and renal plasma flow, you can see steep increase or decrease, but in between this range there is an effort to keep it nearly constant, and this is what we call autoregulation, and this is brought upon by two mechanisms, tubuloglomerular feedback or myogenic mechanism. So what is the significance of autoregulation of GFR in renal blood flow is good without saying that otherwise a small reduction or increase in the mean arterial pressure would lead to a huge increase or decrease in the urine output that would become problematic for the patient. So despite this huge variation, the body is capable of keeping this auto-regulated. So for understanding the tubuloglomerular feedback, we need to see into the necessary machinery required for it, which is known as juxtaglomerular complex or apparatus. Juxtaglomerular means close to the glomerulus. It includes the juxtaglomerular cells, which is present in the afferent and the efferent arterioles, particularly where it comes in proximity to the distal tubule, whereas it also includes the macula densa cells, which are specialized cells capable of sensing sodium chloride and are present in the distal convoluted tubule. So macula densa are distal tubular cells that can sense sodium chloride, present in proximity to afferent efferent arterioles. They have abundant Golgi apparatus and intracellular secretory granules so that they can send their message via these autocoids to the afferent and efferent arterioles. Whereas juxtaglomerular cells are present in afferent efferent arterioles and they can store renin and release at the time of need. Tubuloglomerular feedback mechanism, it senses the problem in the tubule and sends the message to the glomerulus to provide the feedback. So the problem, it begins if there was decreased GFR for any reason, mostly because of glomerular hydrostatic pressure decrease. So whenever there is decreased GFR for whatever reason, this is going to lead to decreased sodium chloride filtration, which will, when reach the macula densa at the level of distal convoluted tubule, tubuloglomerular feedback will begin over here. This will sense and will send the message via the autocoids to the afferent and efferent arterioles in close proximity to release the renin, which was stored in the juxtaglomerular cells. This renin will lead to increased angiotensin 2 formation, and this angiotensin 2 in return will do what? we know efferent arteriolar constriction, plus there would be dilatation of afferent arterioles via the nitric oxide and the prostaglandins. Collectively, these two will increase the glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure, which will increase the GFR back to normal, increase the sodium chloride delivery back to normal. There will be no more synthesis of renin and everything would be normalized. So what happened on the first hand, macula densa sends the low delivery of sodium chloride, which sent the message to the juxtaglomerular cells to decrease renin. They led to constriction of the efferent arterioles and dilatation of the afferent arterioles via angiotensin 2 over here, nitric oxide and prostaglandins over here. Ultimately, glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure increased and GFR was normalized. This may act in the opposite way as well. For any reason in which GFR was increased, sodium chloride delivery was increased, renin secretion would be decreased, and here there would be constriction of the afferent arteriole to decrease the glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure back to normal, and all this is happening because of close proximation of the macula densa cells with the juxtaglomerular cells in the afferent and efferent arterioles, which are capable of releasing autocoids. And this is showing the breakup of further steps. How does renin lead to angiotensin 2 formation? Basically, this is renin which converts this substrate angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1, which when passing through the lungs get converted by angiotensin converting enzyme into angiotensin 2. This angiotensin 2 is then capable of leading to the vasoconstriction at the level of efferent arterioles, and then it gets inactivated into inactive metabolites. Also, the angiotensin converting enzyme does not stay activated lifelong. It also gets to be activated, and there are multiple other factors. Anyways, the purpose of showing this to you is to show you the therapeutic application of this. If someone is suffering from hypertension, this can be used as a therapeutic target by giving the enzymes which inhibit the production or release of renin, by giving the drugs which inhibit this angiotensin converting enzyme, by giving the drugs which can block these angiotensin 2 receptors. And this is showing the other factors in addition to the tubuloglomerular feedback that can affect the renin secretion. For example, directly by the sympathetic stimulation, renin secretion can be increased. By the catecholamines and prostaglandins, it can increase, whereas angiotensin 2 and other factors can inhibit it. These are also the conditions that increase renin secretion. Topmost remain still the tubuloglomerular feedback and sympathetic activation. Pharmacological inhibition of renin-angiotensin 2 system, as I showed you in the previous diagram or flowchart, inhibition of renin secretion can be done, for example, by inhibiting the sympathetic receptors at the juxtaglomerular cells, by blocking the beta receptors, or by giving this prostaglandin synthesis inhibitors, indomethacin. Renin activity can be inhibited by giving these enzymes, renin inhibitors, or angiotensin converting enzyme can be inhibited. Angiotensin 2 receptors can be blocked. All these can be used as therapeutic target for the regulation of renal blood flow, GFR, as well as the blood pressure. This is the therapeutic examples of angiotensin 2 receptor blockers. As we saw in the previous flow chart, angiotensin has two types of receptors, type 1 and type 2 receptors. Type 1 receptors are particularly there for the efferent arteriolar constriction. So, if we are talking about the therapeutic target, let's predict the impact of these on the GFR and renal blood flow. Angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, if are given, angiotensin 2 will not be formed, efferent arteriolar constriction will not be there, rather GFR may decrease. And this is used as a therapeutic target to prevent kidney damage in case of hypertensive patients. Similarly, angiotensin 2 receptor blockers will have the decreased GFR and prevent the kidney injury in the patient of hypertension. Then comes the other mechanism of autoregulation by the myogenic mechanism. First, we have seen the tubuloglomerular feedback. What does this myogenic autoregulation do? It takes the advantage of the intrinsic capability of the smooth muscles alongside the renal vasculature, that if stretched, they do not maintain pressure for long, and if relaxed, they can increase their tone. So what happens in case of increased blood pressure? The vascular wall gets stretched. By stretching, there is influx of calcium via the mechanical gated calcium channels. This calcium leads to smooth muscle contraction, and there is vasoconstriction, increased vascular resistance, and this prevents excessive changes in the renal blood flow and GFR. Otherwise, what would happen if there is increased arterial blood pressure, too much blood flowing into the glomerular capillaries, there would have been too much filtration. But because of this myogenic mechanism, when blood pressure was too high, the smooth muscles got constricted, and rather there was vasoconstriction, less blood entering into the glomerular capillaries, there would be less filtration, and there would be prevention of excessive change in the GFR as well as the renal blood flow. And this goes vice versa as well. In case of very low blood pressure, what would happen? The smooth muscles will rather relax and the vessels will dilate to allow for the adequate amount of filtration and the renal blood flow. This is how autoregulation helps in maintaining the renal blood flow and the GFR. In addition to the sympathetic nervous system, autocoids, and intrinsic mechanism, there are other variable factors in the body which can impact the level of GFR and renal blood flow. For example, high protein diet, blood glucose diet, certain metal poisoning. And I'm going to show you the summarized flow chart of one of them. For example, by high protein ingestion, what would happen? There would be increased level of amino acids being filtered into the proximal tubule, and when the amino acids are reabsorbed as co-transport with sodium amino acids co-transport, more amino acids being reabsorbed, more sodium will be reabsorbed. When the filtrate reaches the distal convoluted tubule, macula densa will sense low sodium chloride. Although it was filtered fine, GFR was normal, but it reached less at the distal convoluted tubule. It will respond by activating tubuloglomerular feedback, by producing renin and increasing GFR. So after high protein, high glucose digestion, because of low amount of sodium chloride reaching the macula densa, tubuloglomerular feedback will be activated and GFR will be falsely increased. And this is a summary of miscellaneous factors which can increase or decrease GFR. I hope you can give it a read by yourself as well. And before I conclude, this is a quick summary of renal blood flow variations in different regions of the cortex and medulla. It is highest in the cortex, lower in outer medulla, and much lower in the inner medulla. And you can also see the oxygen extraction ratio, because very low amount of blood is reaching the inner medulla, so it has to extract a higher amount of oxygen. And that is why inner medulla is most vulnerable to hypoxia. You can recall the concept of renal papillary necrosis that we saw in the session on the renal blood supply during physiological anatomy of kidney discussion. And that's all about the brief overview of renal blood flow, GFR, its determinants and regulation. Thank you very much.